Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that nobody is coming to save you. No secret mentor. No perfect opportunity. No magical moment where someone taps you on the shoulder and says, "Congratulations, you're ready." At first, that sounds terrifying, but according to marketing legend Seth Godin, it might be the most liberating realization you'll ever have. Because the biggest lie most of us have been taught is that success comes after permission. We wait for approval from our parents, approval from teachers, approval from bosses, approval from strangers on the internet. We spend years waiting for a green light that never comes. And while we're waiting, life quietly moves on without us. Think about it. How many great ideas have died inside people's heads because they were waiting for someone else to tell them they were good enough? How many businesses never started? How many books were never written? How many YouTube channels never uploaded their first video? The world is full of people with dreams. But dreams are cheap. Action is rare. And that's exactly where Seth Godin's message begins. He says that in today's world, the people who win aren't necessarily the smartest, the richest, or the most talented. They're the people who decide to pick themselves. What does that mean? It means stopping the endless search for validation. It means deciding that your work matters before anyone else agrees that it matters. It means pressing publish before you're comfortable. It means posting your first video when you're scared. It means starting the business when you don't have all the answers. It means stepping into the arena while everyone else is still sitting in the audience talking about what they might do someday. The truth is that nobody knows exactly what they're doing when they start. The entrepreneurs you admire, they were confused. The creators you follow, they were nervous. The successful people you look up to, they were uncertain. The difference is that they acted anyway. But if it's that simple, then why don't more people do it? Because of something Seth Godin calls resistance. Resistance is that invisible force that shows up the moment you try to do something meaningful. You know exactly what it feels like. You sit down to work on an important project. Suddenly, checking your phone seems urgent. Cleaning your room becomes fascinating. Scrolling social media feels necessary. Watching just one more video becomes irresistible. Resistance is sneaky. It disguises itself as logic. It whispers things like, maybe tomorrow, maybe you're not ready, maybe you need more research, maybe you should wait until conditions are perfect. But Seth Godin says something incredibly powerful. The stronger the resistance, the more likely it is that you're working on something important. Think about that. Have you ever noticed that you don't procrastinate on things that don't matter? Nobody procrastinates on eating ice cream. Nobody procrastinates on watching their favorite show. Nobody procrastinates on scrolling TikTok for an hour. We procrastinate on the things that could actually change our lives. Starting a business, applying for a job, launching a channel, having a difficult conversation, writing the first chapter. Those things trigger fear because they matter. And resistance feeds on fear. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a forest. One path is easy, comfortable, and familiar. The other path is uncertain and challenging. Resistance will always push you toward comfort, but growth almost always lives on the uncomfortable path. This doesn't mean fear disappears. It means learning to move while fear is present. That's a completely different mindset. Most people believe confidence comes first and action comes second. In reality, action comes first. Confidence comes later. Confidence is a reward, not a requirement. Every successful person you know has spent time being bad at something. The beginner guitarist sounded terrible. The beginner athlete looked awkward. The beginner entrepreneur made mistakes. The beginner YouTuber uploaded videos nobody watched. But they kept going. And eventually, competence replaced fear. One of the most interesting ideas Seth shares is the difference between a problem and a situation. Most people treat every obstacle like a problem. But many obstacles aren't problems at all. They're situations. A problem has a solution. A situation is simply reality. For example, bad weather is a situation. You can complain about it. You can wish it were different. But your complaints won't change the weather. Traffic is often a situation. Your age is a situation. The passage of time is a situation. Certain facts about reality simply exist. The moment you stop fighting situations, something incredible happens. You free up energy. Instead of wasting effort arguing with reality, you start focusing on what can actually be changed. And that's where real power begins. Think about how much mental energy people spend wishing reality were different. They wish they had started earlier. They wish they were taller. They wish they had more money. They wish circumstances were perfect. But wishing doesn't create progress. Action does. When you accept situations and focus on solving actual problems, you become far more effective. Suddenly, your energy moves from complaining to creating, from excuses to execution, from frustration to forward movement. Another idea Seth introduces sounds incredibly simple, but it can completely change the way you think. Replace the word but with the word and. At first, this sounds insignificant. It's just one word. But listen carefully. When people say, "I'm tired, but I want to exercise," what usually happens? The second half disappears. The word but acts like an eraser. It cancels everything that came before it. Now listen to this. "I'm tired and I'm going to exercise." exercise. Feel the difference. The tiredness still exists, but it no longer controls the outcome. Or consider this. I'm nervous and I'm going to upload the video. I'm afraid and I'm going to start the business. I don't feel ready and I'm taking the first step. This tiny shift is powerful because it acknowledges reality without surrendering to it. Life isn't about waiting until obstacles disappear. Life is about moving forward while obstacles exist. The people who achieve extraordinary things aren't obstacle-free. They're simply willing to act despite the obstacles. And that changes everything. Because if you're waiting for fear to vanish, you may wait forever. But if you're willing to move alongside fear, your life can start changing today. The question isn't whether you're scared. The question is whether your fear gets to make decisions for you. And for most people, that's where the battle is won or lost. Not in some dramatic moment, not in a life-changing breakthrough, but in the quiet decision to take one step forward when every excuse tells you to stay where you are. And what Seth Godin reveals next might be the most surprising lesson of all. Because the reason most people never start isn't that their goals are too small. It's that they're aiming at the wrong audience entirely. Most people think their problem is that they're not reaching enough people, not enough views, not enough followers, not enough customers, not enough attention. So they keep thinking bigger, bigger audience, bigger idea, bigger launch, bigger impact. But Seth Godin flips that idea completely upside down. He says the real breakthrough doesn't come from trying to reach everyone. It comes from being brave enough to start with almost no one, a single person, a tiny group, the smallest viable audience. Now that sounds almost insulting at first, because we've been trained to think success means going viral, blowing up, reaching millions. But ask yourself something honestly. If you can't impact one person deeply, what makes you think you can impact a million? If you can't create something meaningful for a small group, scaling it doesn't fix it. It just spreads the emptiness further. The truth is, every meaningful movement, every powerful brand, every real shift in culture started small. Not with millions watching, but with a handful of people who cared. Think about the first YouTube video ever uploaded by creators who are huge today. No lighting setup, no editing team, no viral strategy, just an idea and the courage to share it. And that's the part most people miss. They think they need validation first. But validation is usually the result of starting, not the requirement for starting. Seth Godin pushes this even further. He says you don't need permission. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need a massive audience. You need to pick yourself. And once you do that, something uncomfortable happens. You realize the biggest obstacle was never the market. It was your own hesitation. And that hesitation often shows up in a more subtle form. Perfectionism. The idea that your work isn't ready yet. That it needs one more revision, one more improvement, one more week, one more course, one more piece of research, one more reason to delay action. Perfectionism feels responsible. It feels safe. But in reality, it's often just fear wearing a professional outfit. Because perfect is a moving target that never arrives. You can always improve something. You can always refine it. You can always delay it. And that's exactly how people end up stuck for years without shipping anything. Seth Godin uses a simple but powerful word for the opposite of perfectionism. Ship it, not perfect it, not someday it. Ship it, meaning decide what the work is supposed to do, meet that standard, and release it into the world. Because work only matters when it exists outside your head. A video nobody watches is still a video. A business nobody knows about is still a business. A book nobody reads is still a book. But ideas that stay in your head forever don't exist in the real world at all. And this is where most people quietly lose. They confuse preparation with progress. They feel busy, but they're not moving forward. So Seth suggests a simple but uncomfortable shift. Before you start anything, ask two questions. Who is this for? And what is it for? Most people skip this step. They start creating without direction, so they end up lost halfway through. But when you define the audience clearly, even if it's tiny, everything becomes easier. Because now you're not trying to impress everyone. You're trying to help someone specific. And when you know what the work is for, you stop drifting. You stop endlessly tweaking. You stop second-guessing every decision. You start finishing. And finishing is where momentum is born. Because nothing changes your confidence like completing something. Not thinking, not planning, completing. But even then, there's another hidden ingredient most people ignore. Environment. The people around you. Seth calls it your cohort. The small group of people who don't just cheer for you, but challenge you. People who tell you the truth. People who don't let you hide behind excuses. People who notice when you're avoiding your work. Because if everyone around you is comfortable with procrastination, you will be too. But if even a few people around you are consistently building, shipping, creating, improving, it becomes much harder to stay stuck. You start to normalize action. And that changes your identity over time. You stop being someone who wants to do things someday. And you start becoming someone who actually does things. Now here's something Seth Godin says that sounds almost harsh at first. He challenges the idea of authenticity. Most people think authenticity means always expressing whatever you feel in the moment. If you feel unmotivated, you don't work. If you feel tired, you quit early. If you feel uninspired, you don't create. But Seth argues that this version of authenticity is often just an excuse to be inconsistent. Instead, he talks about something stronger: consistency, professionalism, the decision to show up as the person you said you would be, even when you don't feel like it. Because feelings change constantly, but identity is built through repeated actions. You don't become a disciplined person by feeling disciplined. You become disciplined by acting consistently enough that discipline becomes your default. And that's where everything starts to shift, not in one dramatic breakthrough, but in hundreds of small decisions to keep going when stopping would be easier. So when you zoom out and look at all of this together, a pattern starts to emerge. Stop waiting for permission. Stop trying to reach everyone. Stop chasing perfection. Stop relying on motivation. Instead, pick yourself. Start small. Ship your work. Focus on someone real. Surround yourself with people who push you forward. And show up consistently, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because that discomfort you feel right before starting, that's not a stop sign. That's the signal that something meaningful is right in front of you. And most people will back away from it. But a few will move toward it. And those few are the ones who end up changing everything. Not because they were more talented, but because they were willing to begin. And this is where everything starts to come together. Because once you stop waiting, once you start small, once you ship your work, and once you surround yourself with people who push you forward, there's still one final thing Seth Godin says you need to understand. And it's not about strategy anymore. It's about courage. He uses a phrase that sounds almost chaotic at first. Make a ruckus. Not noise for attention. Not chaos for the sake of it. But meaningful disruption. Work that matters. Work that changes something, even if it's just a tiny corner of the world. Because most people don't fail because they lack ideas. They fail because they play too small. They edit themselves before the world ever gets a chance to respond. They silence their own creativity in advance just to avoid judgment. But Seth Godin's point is simple. If your work isn't causing any reaction at all, it might not be reaching anyone who actually cares. Now that doesn't mean chasing controversy. It means being willing to stand for something specific. To create something that might not appeal to everyone, but deeply resonates with the right people. And that's uncomfortable. Because the moment you stop trying to please everyone, you also accept that some people won't like what you do. But here's the truth most people avoid. You don't need everyone. You never did. You just need the right people. And those people are out there looking for exactly what you're afraid to create. But resistance will always try to stop you right before that moment. Seth Godin calls it out clearly. Resistance doesn't show up when you're doing meaningless work. It shows up when you're about to do something that matters. That's why scrolling feels easy, but starting feels hard. That's why distractions feel attractive, but focus feels uncomfortable. Resistance is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're finally doing something that counts. And if you learn to recognize that, everything changes. Because now, instead of avoiding resistance, you start using it as a signal. The more resistance you feel, the more important the task probably is. So instead of backing away, you lean in. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. And this is where most people reach a turning point in their lives without even realizing it. They either choose comfort, or they choose growth. And that choice is made in small moments every day. Not in dramatic life decisions, but in simple actions like starting when you don't feel like it, finishing when you want to quit, publishing when it feels imperfect, speaking when your voice shakes, showing up when nobody is watching. And over time, those small decisions build something powerful. Not just a skill set, but an identity. You stop being someone who thinks about doing meaningful work, and you become someone who actually does it. Now zoom out for a second. Everything Seth Godin is really talking about is not just productivity. It's a way of living. A way of deciding who gets control of your life. Fear or action. Resistance or movement. Delay or creation. And most people don't realize how often they've already been choosing fear without noticing it. Every, I'll do it later. Every, I'm not ready. Every, I need more time. Those are not neutral statements. They are decisions. Decisions that slowly shape your life without you even realizing it. But the moment you become aware of that pattern, you gain something powerful. Choice. And with choice comes responsibility. Not blame. Responsibility. The ability to respond differently. So when resistance shows up, you now know what it is. When perfectionism shows up, you recognize it as disguised hesitation. And when you feel stuck, you don't need more motivation. You need motion. Even small motion breaks the cycle. A paragraph written, a video recorded, a message sent, a decision made. Progress doesn't care how small the step is. It only cares that you took one. And once you start moving, something strange happens. Momentum takes over. What felt impossible starts feeling manageable. What felt overwhelming starts feeling structured. What felt terrifying starts feeling normal. Not because the challenge changed, but because you did. And that is the real transformation Seth Godin is pointing toward. Not becoming fearless, but becoming someone who acts despite fear. Now imagine what happens if you live like this for a year. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but consistently. You would have shipped more work than most people ever start. You would have faced more resistance than most people avoid. You would have built more real confidence than any motivational quote could ever give you. And slowly, quietly, without dramatic announcements, your life would start to look different. Not because one big moment changed everything, but because hundreds of small decisions did. So the final question is not whether you're capable. It's whether you're willing to begin again today. Even if yesterday didn't go well. Even if you feel behind. Even if you're uncertain. Because the truth is, nobody is coming to give you permission. Nobody is coming to tell you the perfect time. Nobody is coming to remove the fear for you. You either start, or you don't. And if you do start, you don't need to see the whole path. You just need to see the next step. That's it. One step, then another, and eventually, you look back and realize something powerful. You didn't just build a project. You didn't just create content. You didn't just complete tasks. You changed who you are. And that's the real message underneath everything Seth Godin teaches. Pick yourself. Start small. Ship your work. Lean into resistance. Find your people. Show up consistently. And make something that matters. Not for everyone, but for someone. And maybe, over time, that someone includes you too.